Team, today we're going to be talking about the must-haves for brand guidelines. Let's go! Firstly, what is a brand guideline? Essentially, it is a doc, as you can see here, that helps with internal and external communication. It's a document that helps the brand gain clarity and alignment on who they are and how they want to promote themselves in the outside world, which helps dictate their image by how others see them from the outside world. And finally, it helps them be consistent with execution. So when we think about things like colors, logo usage, like consistent typography, a brand guidelines doc will essentially help a client or the designer of the client or the client's internal design team to stay consistent with all of those things. So it helps with internal and external communication. It helps with brand clarity and getting them aligned on their vision, mission, purpose, and all that beautiful stuff, consistent tone of voice and all that goodness. And then finally, it helps them be extremely consistent with how to use it, both internally and externally as well, with reference to their marketing materials, their websites, their social media, their advertising campaigns, or whatever it is. It's just a guide that helps create this cohesive, consistent message. All right. Now, I've seen brand guidelines that are hundreds of pages. I've also seen some people who do 2 or 3 page ones. Now, there is no right or wrong way. Ultimately, what I would usually suggest or say is that the depth of a brand guideline would essentially be based on the deliverables that you are executing for your client. But that also comes down to, there's strategy, there's positioning, there's messaging, there's, logos, colors, voice pillars. Like, you think about how big a brand is, or the branding that goes involved in that, both internally and externally. These things could be colossal. Now, not all of us here will do a load of deep strategy. Not all of us here will have this huge company with multinational offices where everybody's got to be doing the same thing. Like, sometimes we're working with a small mom and pop shop, sometimes we're working with a small SME, sometimes we're working with a big conglomerate. Like, what we've got to do is we've got to be very understanding of our clients' needs for when it comes to a brand document. And also, as a designer, what we need to do is we need to be very proactive in the things that we're putting in there, making sure that they're useful to the client. But again, just to reiterate, there is no right or wrong answer. Like, every brand guideline should be 45 pages exactly and have this, and that, because it does depend on what you are doing for your client, okay? Also, the contents could be based on what your client wants. Now, I have been, obviously, like, when you create your work, when you build your visual identity, when you understand the deliverables with your client at the beginning, it's very common that what you would then do is you would go through that standard process of, like, let's say you did work on the positioning and the strategy and the visual identity and the whole brand's identity. You would have to have elements of all of that. I say you'd have to. You should possibly put all of the elements of that brand's identity within that document so the client can read it and go and understand it and keep consistent with it, like voice pillars, like messaging, mission, vision, photography style, colors, typography choices, design systems, and all of these beautiful things like you could put in your potential brand guidelines doc. Now, another way to look at it is actually being very proactive and asking your client at the beginning stages. Like, I usually put together a 30-page guidelines doc together with this, and this in it. But would you use it? Would you open it? Will you ever read it? What are the most important things to you? Blah, 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 blah. Now, again, like, as designers, I think what we have fallen into the trap of sometimes is building a brand guidelines that would impress our design friends. Now, essentially we have to find a balance here, because the most important thing is that you give your clients what they need and something that they will use. So if you are creating a huge guidelines document, make sure it's interactive, so they have a contents page that they can kind of click through and go straight to that page, rather than having to sift through hundreds and hundreds of pages. Or you can create them a big brand doc with all of the fluffy designer gump stuff in it that they will probably never read, and then also give them like a shorter version, like maybe with some color codes, maybe with some logo variations, maybe with some type choices, just so they've got that as well. So it's always good, like if you're looking to create these great experiences and build great relationships with your clients, always cater to their needs, because I will tell you right now, not many designers, not many clients go through a whole brand doc from my experience. Okay, so be very, very wary of that. So, with all that aside, for me, if I was telling any designer, or I had to put a certain set of things that were absolutely essential within a brand guidelines doc, again, depending on deliverables, depending on all the things we've talked about, these are some of the things that I would be wanting to put in there. So number one, a brief brand overview. Number two, the logo and the logo usage variations. Number three, type pairing. Number four, the color options. Number five, the associated imagery. Number six, the communication style. And number seven, the application templates, like how it's going to be executed. So let's go to these in a little bit more detail individually. So brief brand overview. So what I would really want to do as a bare minimum, if my clients were happy for me to put this thing together for them, was diving into the story, diving into the mission, the vision, the purpose, all that brand heart, talk a little bit about the positioning, talk a little bit about the audience, talk a little bit about the personality. What I want to do is put together a few pages that expressed our learnings from the discovery calls and the clarity discussions, and the reason why all this stuff was built was based off that story. So it's really important to add that in there, and it is really good internally for the client, because then they could share it with their team and say, these are how we talk all the time. This is our tone of voice. This is the kind of messaging we're using. This is the personality. Blah 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 blah. It just gives them something. And it's also like a north star for them. If they've got like their mission and their vision and their purpose kind of aligned in these things, and things like their voice and all the rest of it, it allows them just to go back to something that allows them to be consistent all the time with it. So that would be one thing, is like that brand overview, those kind of vision, mission, value kind of stuff. Number two would be the logo would have to be an essential. The icon, the horizontal mock-ups, the vertical mock-ups, any variations, any responsive elements, any safe zones, anything like that, color options, like breaking down how to use the logo, how not to use the logo, the primary lockups, then the secondary and the tertiary versions, like having some sort of detailed breakdown of those logos and its uses, I think is really, really important for the client. Number three, type pairing. Again, this isn't just the logo type with the logo mark. This is the associated type and font choices that we bring into the brand for use in copy and websites, for use in marketing, social media templates, presentation templates, any advertising that they do. I think it's really important to pair. I always like to go with like two or three different font pairings that align together. So you maybe have a header font, a copy font, and then a display font to help do some pop quotes or anything like that. So for example, if you look at this page, I've got the must-have for brand guidelines at the top. That would be my display font that I use quite rarely. Then I've got this big Thunder font, which I use for my big headers and stuff like that. And I've got other ones that I use, like Beatrice, and I use Go Bold a little bit. But I've got like 3 or 4 there that I use intertwined. And also within my illustration style or illustrative style, I've got my MBJ font collection, which I always drip in there as well. So it's always good to be consistent with these fonts, and it's always good to give your clients all of these options within the doc, and also like in the doc itself, link to the font so they can download it nice and easy. All right. Color options. Simple hex codes, Pantones, CMYK values, RGBs. If you don't have a Pantone book, don't worry too much. What I would do is I would suggest that these are, hex codes, CMYK codes, Pantone RGB codes. Like if they're ever looking to print, I would always just say to them, like, make sure you and your printer choose a Pantone. Once you've understood that or got that Pantone, we can then add it to your brand doc or your brand guidelines. That's if you don't have a Pantone book yourself, because they are quite expensive, I understand that. So, but if you were going to want to do a really detailed summary of colors, it would be your hex, your CMYKs, your RGBs, and your Pantones. Do you know what I mean? In some sort of no particular order. Do you know what I mean? But Pantones are particularly important for print, remember. Associated imagery. Now, this is something that gets forgotten a lot, like photography style. This should all be kind of used with the personality of the brand. Any extra illustrative assets, any iconography, anything like that that goes with the logo, that goes with the visual identity, that's going to help the client communicate across all of their materials. This associated imagery thing is something that's forgotten a lot, but it brings so much power, especially the photography part. All right. Number 6, communication style. Talked a little bit about this at number 1, but voice pillars, some examples of their voice in action, like some tonal bits, like as I said, like tone of voice, messaging examples, and all those kind of things, just to give the client an example of how best to communicate with their audience. And then number 3, application templates. Now, again, like I said, these are based on deliverables for like random stuff that you might put together for like a brand identity project or a visual identity project. So like the application templates, I think, are really, really important to add in there, because like if you did like 3 different styles, social media templates for carousels, you might do what their web page might look like, what a poster might look like, what a presentation deck might look like. Obviously, you're building these into the budget and talking about them in the beginning with reference to deliverables, but showing the logo is only as good as the system it's built in. Do you know what I mean? Which includes the colors, the templates, the hierarchy, the layout, the gridding, and all the rest of it. So be sure to remember the application templates, because that's how sometimes I see a lot of designers going, oh my god, the client doesn't use their logo properly, but then I find out that the designer didn't give them the right things to use it properly with, so they're just going off crazy by themselves. Always make sure you give your client some templates. All right. Oh, color change. Unpredictable, random, smile, sizzle. Did you know you can't hum while holding your nose? I bet you tried it too. Random, unpredictable. Love it. Let's go. I don't know if I like putting these in, but I quite like them. I like them. Let's keep them in. Let's keep going. A little insight. Going back to what I was talking about before. 4 out of 5 clients admitted to never reading the entire brand document. I've been having calls with loads and loads and loads of my clients, and clients that I have worked with, and clients that I haven't worked with. And I ask them a lot the same questions, like how often do they use certain things, that like when designers send them 400 logo files, how many did they use? 1 or 2, they say. So just remember that. And also the brand guidelines. 4 out of 5 admitted to me on average that they never read the whole brand guideline. So this is why it's really important at that beginning stage to just talk them through it, ask them the things that they need, ask them the things that they want, they're actually going to use, because you also don't want to be wasting your time putting things together that are never going to be used. So always ask that question. All right, team? There you go. Grab the freebie below, absorb more knowledge around here somewhere, and don't forget to subscribe.